Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar on what you should consider in your document management strategy. My name is Ana de Jorge and I'm in charge of the marketing department at SME, and today I have the pleasure of moderating this webinar. I would like to introduce today's presenters. So this webinar, let me change the slide. This webinar will be hosted by Thomas Owen, Head of Security at Memset, and James Norman, Engineering Manager at Storage Made Easy. Welcome, both of you guys. If you would like to introduce very quick yourselves and the company you are working for. Yes.
Hi there, Tom Owen, Head of Security and Business Services at Memset. My role is a bit of a split brain thing, 50% securing the business and helping our customers be secure, and 50% running the internal IT project management and all the business supporting functions. So I've got an uncomfortable position of being a sort of a CISO and sort of CIO at the same time. Memset themselves, UK-based cloud hosting company, SME, and we've got a particular focus on security and customer service.
Thank you, Tom. James, please.
Hi, good morning. I'm James Norman. I'm the engineering manager from Storage Made Easy. In my position, I do a lot of the engineering work with our developers. I also work very closely with a number of our customers who are deploying our product, which is called the Enterprise File Fabric, which is a solution offered by Memset, where customers can get control of their data with audit compliance and end users functionality as well.
Thank you, James. So as you can imagine, our intention with this topic today is to help companies that are joining today the webinar. So let's crack on with the agenda. Your screen, you should now see the agenda for this webinar. So first, there will be a quick introduction about document management, followed by the presentation of the three big problems with document management. And after that, we will learn about the benefits that the file fabric together with Memset solution. Finally, we will have, of course, around 15 minutes about Q&A. So please feel free to ask any of the questions that you've got during the webinar in the chat box, and we will pick them up at the end of the session. Just a very quick reminder, there will be a recorded version of the webinar. And just before we get started, we would like to know, there is a question we would like to ask you guys. We would like to know at what stage is your document strategy right now? So if you could please select your answer, that will help us. So maybe you don't have a strategy, or you are at the stage of looking for information, or maybe you might be working on one, or you already have a strategy. So if you could please select your answers, that would be great. Oh, a couple of seconds. That's great. Let me just close the poll and share the results. So Tom and James, I think with this in mind, we could get started.
Very good.
Thank you. So let me just change these. Great.
Right. So let's be honest. Very few people wake up in the morning enthused with the possibilities of document management. God bless those that do, but this is not a sexy business capability that people get excited about. Unless your organization literally sells document management as a service, for instance, if you're in the legal industry, it's rarely seen as a business critical function. Document management is one of those sets of processes and tooling that, done right, can sit at the core of a business, improving the efficiency of multiple teams. But done badly, it's a fairly hated cost center, and it can introduce high friction processes that irritate and hinder staff, and that can create sweeping, disruptive, and often very hard to manage change. So what does document management mean? Disciplines that underlie document management are things like knowledge management, keeping internal processes and data fresh, accurate, and locatable. Contract management, another form of knowledge. As we can imagine, managing your contracts appropriately is actually quite important. Often there's quite a big aspect around governance and auditability. If you're in an industry that's got any kind of regulation around it, to be honest, that's all industries. Now the GDPR is there. You've got to love an audit trail. Document management is a fairly generic capability. Most organizations, whilst they'll all have the differences, and every organization is unique, will have roughly the same kinds of processes for managing documentation, contracts, work instructions, processes, audit records, that kind of thing. It's not a capability that's going to set the world on fire. But get those aspects wrong, and your customer experience suffers, inefficiency costs mount up, and you'll find yourself increasingly exposed to legal and regulatory risks.
Okay.
So what do we need to think about when we're writing a document management strategy? And this is a process that I've been through multiple times and have implemented at Memset. Document management is a boring problem. Boring problems often have boring solutions, and business performance is rarely ever revolutionized by heavy investment in things that are boring. What we want is a strategy that does more than just fill in some process gaps, streamline some things, and make the business a little bit more consistent. What we want to do is implement a new set of tooling and processes that create a step change in business performance. Mm-hmm. Sounds ambitious for a boring capability. Mm-hmm. So let's define our stakeholders. What roles are vital to the business? Who also interact the most with document management type activities? As far as we're concerned, that's sales, operations, and leadership. I've always held that operations, or manufacturing, or service delivery, depending on your business, are the engine room, the motive force of the business. Sales are the accelerator pedal, in that when you put them under pressure, the business tends to move faster. Mm-hmm. And leadership are the steering wheel, in that their attention makes the difference between steering a safe and productive course or smashing into something immovable. Sales, ops, and leadership all make significant use of business data and organizational knowledge. They all interact with the legal documents that define your future liability, and they all perform actions that in many industries are more or less regulated. So what aspects do these roles need from a new document management system? Something that could be transformative to the business. You need to enforce consistency. Inconsistencies in sales, product management, or operations can cripple an organization over time. A concrete example would be a concrete customer requirement that's agreed by pre-sales during negotiation that isn't properly captured in contracts or the service design, and then it's not delivered accurately by ops on time. And that's exactly the kind of thing that burns customer goodwill and starts damaging your brand, particularly as your organization scales out. Document management needs to provide an intuitive set of processes. A salesperson is managed on a revenue versus time basis. Their time literally is money. Similarly, a complex and intuitive set of processes around knowledge sharing or contract management can increase the time to value for any new hire, as they have to have a much longer onboarding process in the business. And it certainly, in my experience, hamstrings instant response when time-critical data is required immediately. Sales and ops both need the right information in the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. Your document management system needs to be efficient. Document management, while potentially not an exciting capability, does live at the core of most of your business processes. It enables almost everything that your business does in some form or another. So it's a key target for any hidden efficiency savings. Your document management system needs to be secure. I hope I don't need to spell this one out. If you're a successful business, chances are you generate data, documentation, or IP that has value. That value needs to be protected from people that want it. Mm-hmm. Your document management system, ideally, is aware of the mobile revolution. Your salespeople are often best placed as road warriors, so they're on the travel. Mm-hmm. Operations need to respond to incidents out of hours in the middle of the night. And if your leadership are doing a good job, they're often not present in the office because they're out expanding the business and your brand. Remote working is also increasingly a legitimate business model. If your document management you're implementing anew isn't enabled for mobile use, you've just implemented an expensive new blocker to a bunch of things that are really, really effective for the business. Related to mobile enablement, your document management system needs to enable collaboration. All of our modern businesses, particularly on the small end like us, exist in an ecosystem of customers, partners, and deep supply chains. Without an ability to easily, accurately, and securely share documents and information, needless friction and costs introduced. And your document system needs to be available. Your documentation knowledge isn't useful if it's offline. Mm-hmm.
So I guess with this in mind, we could talk about this first problem we won't expose today in here.
So when I'm writing a strategy for a new capability within the business, I like to think of my top 3 problems. Mm-hmm. It's the easiest way to sell something to a business, and it's the easiest way to capture the requirements of the business at a high level. What are my problems? So as head of security and business services, CISO, CIO mashup, I've got 3 particular problems I'd like to discuss. Mm-hmm. First off, customer and staff interact with document management systems all day, every day, in a multitude of different ways. Dependencies are complex. The tool needs to support use cases across your business that will likely replace an arbitrary range of personally preferred approaches. You're taking effectively the Wild West of process and saying, no, this is the way it's going to work from now on. Defining success criteria as the satisfaction of your users, it's much easier to deploy a bad system that frustrates users than to get it right. Mm-hmm. Literally, the success criteria of a document management system is how happy does it make your staff. A document management system is a bit like a workshop. A well-laid out workshop has all the tools one needs, when one needs them, in the position that one needs them. A bad workshop leads to frustration, lost time, damaged equipment, potentially broken pieces of work. If an employee circumvents my document management strategy, I'm not quick to blame them. Assuming a basic level of diligence and professionalism in my staff, non-conformance with process for this kind of thing is normally a result of bad tools getting in the way of people doing their job. So, things that would annoy me when implementing a new document management system. Increasing the number of manual activities, even down to the level of clicks to follow processes is mandated by the tool. If I'm implementing a document management strategy, I want it to replace manual tasks. So I want it to operate in an efficient process with the least number of clicks for someone to do something. I also don't want to do lots of user training because the available workflows are unintuitive or don't match the sensible ways of working. I'd ideally like to be able to present a user with a login to a new system, for them to log in and effectively go, yep, this all makes perfect sense. I can already figure out how to work it. Monitoring and enforcing adherence to policy. If I'm putting effort in developing a whole new set of tools, I want the workflows from the tools to prevent exceptions, not gently suggest that perhaps a user might want to do things a different way. If I'm enforcing the correct, sensible, and efficient way to do a piece of work, I don't want users to have options otherwise. We've already found the best approach. And I want a search function that matches the expectation of the least experienced user. My grandmother expects her online search engine to present the most relevant, accurate, and up-to-date results quickly, using search terms that don't require to learn an arcane syntax. My document management system should be the same.
So I guess, James, talking about this first big issue, big problem, you can show us a bit how we could solve this in our companies.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Tom. So I think one of the key points that Tom highlights there is that we don't want to be burning vast amount of time and resources in setting up, running, and maintaining any new system that we want to implement within the organization. Some of the traditional document management systems that you might get off the shelf these days can be very costly to set up and take a long time to get deployed. So I'm going to show you just how easy it is to get the file fabric up and running along with Memset's platform and storage as well. So as you can see on my screen, we're sat here looking at what you might consider to be a normal login screen that our end users might see. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to log in as one of our staff members that we've been ahead just before the demonstration and set up. In my case, I'm going to be logging in as myself. And I'm able to log in as myself because we've set up a connection to our existing authentication systems, whether that's your Windows domain or G Suite or any other sort of external authentication system they might have. The key benefit being here that users are able to log in with familiar credentials that they've used elsewhere. So once we're logged in, we're taken straight to what we refer to as the file manager. This gives us the overview of the system, and we can see the different folders and files that we have access to. We might not see everything because in this case we've set up some permissions ahead of time, but there might be more files and folders that they can't see here. So many organizations will face some pretty common challenges inside the organization related to their document management strategy. And three of those typically are things around document organization, things around workflows and approvals, as well as document retrieval and search. And we're just going to take a brief look at each of those to see how they work with the file fabric and Memset. So here on the left, you'll notice that we see a nice tree view of our file system. And it's a relatively simple setup, this one, where we have our catalog, our invoices, and our customers. And in our case, we've set up what we call team folders, which are indicated by the little person icons in each of these folders. These are telling us that this is a folder that is shared with a number of colleagues, and we've set up permissions with different users able to do different actions in those folders. One of the key things about the file fabric is that it inspires the collaboration between your users. By letting users see each other's updates in real time, especially within team folders, that really helps to reduce the friction for collaboration between the users. So in our case, we're just looking at a simple example between sales and accounts with their catalogs, quotations, and invoices. With a document, working with the documents that they have couldn't be easier with the file fabric. So if, for example, you'd like to edit a document in place, that's very easy with the file fabric, and we're going to show you how. So we have our catalog folder, and in here we might be keeping our, our catalog items that we have. If we wish to edit one of these files, it's very simple. We can just either double click or right click and choose how we want to edit this file. In my case, I'm going to edit this using Microsoft Office Online. This is now going to open up in an editor where I'm able to edit these documents in place. So this is, for example, just a simple Word document. We can go in, make a change. Let's say the thickness has changed on this catalog item. It's saving, and now it's saved directly back to the file fabric. We can close this and leave. One of the things that you'll notice as well is that the file fabric can handle things like versioning. So we can see that we have versions for documents already here. So we're able to track all of the changes that have been made to this document over time. In traditional systems where you might have had before, this might be very difficult to have. You might be keeping duplicates of files, and they can become out of control very quickly if you don't have a system that can manage file versions. If an accidental change was made, of course, we can always roll back that version as well. The file manager also provides lots of other useful features, like being able to look at the files you have in place. So we can select this file if we want to, have a look at the preview if we want to, and see the file just at a glance as well. We can also review other metadata about the file as well, looking at things like how big the file is, where it's being stored, and also some geo-IP information as well about the file itself. So looking, this is from a sort of a document organization perspective. This is quite a simple example, and you can make this even more advanced if you want to. But look at switching over to sort of a workflow perspective, and considering the example we have here of a sort of a sales and accounts team. One of the things that we might want to do is we might want to be adding a new quotation into our system. So if we were to go into the quotations folder, we could already see a number of quotations that exist here in this folder. So we've got, Smith & Wilco, Brown & Core, Exhaust and Brakes. There's a whole range of different quotations here. Now, as a user, I might want to add a new quotation into the system, and I can do so either by dragging and dropping the file into the interface or selecting the file here from the upload dialog. I'm going to choose the file here, and I'm going to go into my quotations, and I'm going to select number 141 VTE Autos. As I'm uploading the file, I can also put some additional metadata on it. We'll come to realize how powerful this is when we look at the search later on, and I'm going to add this while we do the upload. So I'm going to say this account is related to VTE Autos, and I'm also going to put a financial year on it as well, so we can say 2019. This file is now going to be uploaded to our storage system in Memset, and you can see now it's added here in this folder. One of the things you may notice about this file, slightly different from the other files, is it doesn't have a green tick next to it. That indicates that the file hasn't been approved yet. And now, if our process internally were to get this document approved from, perhaps our sales manager, we can now send this document over for approval. The file fabric makes it very easy. You can just right-click the file, say request approval. We can select the approve that we want, and then we can give them a little message so that they know some context about why this document is being requested for approval. That's now going to be sent to Sarah. She'll get an email as well as an internal notification telling her that she needs some approval on a file. Switching over to Sarah's view here, we can see she already has a notification here pending, and it says you've been requested by James to approve the document VTE Autos. So we can go and have a look at that particular quotation. We can see the marker saying it's requested for approval. If she wants to, she can double click on the file, open it up, have a look at the quotation. Previews and views like this are supported for a whole range of different formats. If she wants to put a signature on it, she can put a signature on it. And also she can stamp it with anything else that she wants as well. She can save those annotations, leave the document, and also if she wants to put the final seal of approval on it, she can then say either approve or reject. You can build more complex workflows out of this, but that's a very simple example there. Finally, as we touched on, one of the final pieces there is around using that information that we've put into the system now to be able to search for that information later on. Because if a customer phones up, you need to be able to find that information quickly and get to the answers quickly. So the file fabric has a very handy search feature. It works not only in the file names, but also in the file contents too. So switching over to the search view here, let's go back to the other user. We can go and search. So if we wanted to find anything in this system related to VTE, we could use a search term, see what comes back. Okay, we've still got some information here. We can also build the classifications around that too. So if we want to look at anything related to BT year in the financial year 2019, we could filter that down with really rich searches off the back of that, searching in both the contents of these files and also the file name and the metadata too. So, we've just seen 3 very simple examples of how we can organize our file systems, how we can do things like metadata as well, also how we can search for that information after the fact as well. So I'm going to hand back to Tom here.
Thank you, James. So it looks like even a business, a non-technical business, can easily manage the solution. So let's go to the second problem, Tom, please.
Sure. So I've been in security and compliance for about a decade, and I've been procuring new tools for most of that. One of the most annoying questions I get asked, especially at the end of a qualifying conversation with a salesperson, is, do you have any compliance drivers? Of course I've got compliance drivers. Everyone does, particularly nowadays. Anything from GDPR to financial regulation, PCI DSS. You might have internal standards around quality, health and safety, environment, security. We now exist in a highly regulated set of industries. The thing is, I'm probably not looking to spend a large amount of money on new tooling, assign resources, testing, deployment, and adopt a new block of technical debt just because of the compliance driver. I'd like to be able to assume that the compliance aspects of a given product, be it reporting aligned to relevant standards, configurations that help with data protection, or interfaces with monitoring tools that we already have, already exist. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'll check during testing. That shouldn't have to be a conversation during qualification. The real reason I'm always going to look at new products, and that I'll commit my team behind it, that I'll convince my leaders to sign off on it, is because it's going to bring better and more efficient, make that an enjoyable user experience, because it will enable new ways of working that unlock value for business, or because it will make us materially safer. Compliance isn't a dirty word, but checkbox certainly is. Document management is no different. Yes, a well-integrated design document management system informs and enforces activities that improve and support your compliance posture required by most modern businesses. But that's not the way you drive engagement with business. Keeping customer contracts fresh, presenting up-to-date, correct work instructions to customer support staff, and sharing knowledge better, faster, and more accurately is. Be it GDPR, PCI DSS, ISO 27001 for security, I would like document management tools that automatically satisfy those requirements. Those can be assumed as done. What I'm interested in is, again, that force multiplier for the business, some transformative change. Ultimately, I don't really want to have staff think about much about compliance at all in their day-to-day roles. I'd much rather the right behavior with the necessary activities happen invisibly without impacting on their productivity. That way, the staff can't get it wrong, and those that are most experienced and aware of compliance can take responsibility for managing and enforcing the controls. I want compliance that's baked into a tool in the background.
So James, maybe you can show us a bit how to solve this second problem that Tom is talking about.
Of course.
Let me share with you. Great.
So the big challenge with security and compliance is that if we make the system too secure and too tight, we'll drive the users away. But on the reverse side, if we make it too relaxed and insecure, users want to use it, but it leaves our business exposed. So the file fabric actually makes it very easy to straddle the line between those two, letting the organization have the control around the security and compliance piece, but at the same time also giving the users the tools that they need at their fingertips to do what they need to function in their jobs and their roles, but also to do those things in a secure way and to promote the secure approaches to challenges that they have. So we're going to just take a quick tour around how the file fabric can help the organization secure some of those pieces of security and compliance, and also show that from an end user's perspective as well, how they both work together hand in hand. So again, we're here looking at the file fabric, this time as the kind of what we call the administrator. This is the user that can manage most of the components and the setup of the application. And we're going to go straight to our policies, because this is a great place to start to see some of the controls that you can have as an organization, on your document management system here. There's lots of things that we can go through and control here. Some of these relevant, maybe some of these less relevant for some of you guys. But we're going to start by having a look at things like the encryption piece, for example. As Tom mentioned, businesses will have security drivers around things like GDPR, for example. And GDPR mandates things like, you can make sure your storage is secure. You've got, sufficient at-rest, encryption, for example. So the file fabric makes it very easy to sort of enforce things like encryption on the storage, where you can enter an encryption phrase, and that then means your files are encrypted on the storage using FITS compliant encryption. So that's a very good, starting block for securing your storage piece there. It's very simple and it's transparent to the end users as well. There's lots of other things we can set up through here if we want to configure things like versioning and trash. We saw the versioning working a minute ago. So this is where we can configure how we want our versioning to work, how many versions we want to keep, whether we want to keep our trash as well when files get deleted. We can control things like our classifications and policies around what users need to specify when they're uploading files, for example, as we saw a minute ago. We can control things around user interface, like what functionality is available to our users, whether we want to turn certain functions on and off for our end users in the system. We can control some of the DLP functionality, whether we want to do watermarking on documents, so we can, make sure that we can trace any leaks of information. We want to do things like security, whether that's enforcing two-factor authentication for our users, so that they have more secure accounts and get challenged every time they logged in, or whether that's around sort of our file sharing policies as well. We'll touch on that in a minute, but let's show you just a worked example here. The file fabric supports file sharing, and you might want to control whether passwords are required when files are shared, for example. So if you want to do that through the file fabric, we can have a look at our file sharing policy, and we can say, yes, passwords are required for shared links. We can turn that on. So anytime a user goes to share a file, they must now enter a password. We turn that on, and we can see it saying it's successfully updated, and we'll show you that in a minute. Likewise, if we want to do things like advanced content discovery or sensitive data, the file fabric also provides some very nice functionality around that too, allowing you to configure rules and detectors that will pick up sensitive information and automatically classify your documents. So if you want to find all of the files that are, maybe pushing us to be in compliant with GDPR, for example, maybe containing personal information, you can configure the rules and the detectors for what you want to use. The file fabric also has some templates to help you get started. So if you want to use the GDPR template, you can use that very easily. And we now have the GDPR detection set up, and we'll be able to build our detectors based off of that as well. So we can say we want to find all the files that have email addresses and maybe UK telephone numbers in them. Now, whenever a file travels through the system, we'll then scan it for that information and alert the administrators anytime we find an email address or a telephone number in a file. There's many detectors. They can do things like credit cards, NHS numbers, many other types, and you can also build your own as well. Moving over to the file manager again, you notice we set up the file sharing policy. Now, anytime we go to share a file, what we're able to do now is we actually are forced now to share, set a password whenever we share these files. So if we wanted to share our quotation, let's say we wanted to share the BT Autos one from our web interface. We go through here and we say share, and you can see now that a password is required for sharing this. So we can say, and we can generate a new link. If we wanted to email this to our friend, we could do from the web file manager as well. But not all users like to use the web, and that's why we also provide different channels of access as well through other platforms too. Now I'm going to show you how this also integrates into your other platforms where you expect your users to go as well. So over here we have sort of a Microsoft Outlook, and so we provide the secure sharing tools for users at their fingertips, because in the context that we're looking at with sales and quotations and invoices, we're going to need to be able to send this quotation back to our customers. So how do we do that in a secure way? Ordinarily might just be attaching that file to an email. That information might be sensitive. We might want to know when the users opened the file, for example. And if we're just sending that as a plain attachment, we'll never know, and we'll never be able to track it either once it's out. So with the file fabric, we provide like I said, the secure tools at the user's fingertips. So for example, just one simple example in Outlook is we provide these plugins where you can say share the file. Again, we have the same view that we saw before with catalogs, invoices, and quotations.
Okay.
So if we want to go and share the sort of the VTE autos one, we can say share. We can set some expirations or download limits, for example. And you can also notice that it's telling me that the password is required here.
Yes.
And we can now share this file. It's rather than attaching the file, it's inserted a secure link to this file, which then the recipient can then download. Anytime the user accesses that file, it's all tracked, logged, and recorded inside of the File Fabric's audit event dashboard. So over here, you can see all of the links, all of the actions that we've been taking on this system, have all been recorded inside of our audit event log, but then the admins later on can see what's going on. So that's excellent from a compliance perspective, and of course it can be exported to external systems as well if they need be.
Great, thank you, James. So I guess now we can just go to the last main problem that we want to talk about today. So let me just change the slide. Great.
Thank you very much.
Tom.
So, with the best will in the world, if my internal IT team has more resources available to them than work on our schedule, something's gone wrong with cost control of my business. Internal facing teams need to be lean, and therefore my resources are particularly valuable. The longer a deployment of a new system lasts, the more resource I waste without return that I can evidence back to the business. And what is more, there's also more time that my team could be applying to other projects, and more time for the business to change priorities or add scope to the project. Most organizations struggle with project management. Fast projects are safer. They're also, if that's your flavor, closer to an agile sprint. Quick, well-scoped projects, or those that could be squeezed into a small number of sprints, lead to immediate return on investment and an improved user experience that brings smiles all around. I'd ideally like an application that I can get online quickly in a production-ready state, with all the resilience, security, and user management controls in place, without undue pain, delay, or uncertainty. I'd like to use available, well-formatted documentation and start guides to get an internal beta users on the platform with real workloads generating real user feedback the same day that we start to deploy. I'd also like the investment my team is making to be a force multiplier, integrating natively with the other business tools that we provide, improving the value that those tools embody all at once. I've already got logging, communications, and user management systems in place, and any new tool needs to work with them in ways that make the team managing this and the staff using this happier and more effective.
So James, how could we solve this last problem?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so as Tom highlights there, it's key that any new system that we implement, it has to work hand in hand with anything we have, already running inside of the business, because we don't want to be, buying more software to get this running. We don't want to be spending time on getting integrators in to try and make this work with inside of the organization. We want this up and running as quickly as possible and integrating with everything that we have already inside of the business. That's why it's particularly worth pointing out that the File Fabric has all of the integrations that the users will need there, in combination with the Memset platform, that gives the users access, from any platform they're practically on. So whether they just have access to a web browser, they can do the functions from there. Whether they have access to a mobile device, they can do it from iOS or Android, for example. They can access that also from Windows, Mac, and Linux workstations as well. So we provide all of the tools, all of the functionality at their fingertips, wherever they are, and whether they're in the office or out of the office. As Tom highlighted earlier on, mobility of our staff is also something that's on the rise, and a lot of your staff will be out on the road. So having those tools, for example, on mobile devices is particularly key there. So we've seen a lot so far in the demonstrations of how this looks from the web, and we've just seen a pocket of it inside of Outlook. But I'm just going to take a brief look at how this also looks, from a general end user's point of view on the desktop as well. So as I mentioned, we have integrations into Windows, Mac, and Linux as well. All three of those platforms. We're looking at Windows here because that's one that comes up very, very often with customers. And for the desktops, primarily we provide three sets of tools, and I'm going to cover two of those. One of those is what we call our drives, and the other is what we call our synchronization tools. The drives present themselves as a network share, which you can see here on the left-hand side. This is just giving us a real-time view of the file system. None of the files in this drive are actually stored in our desktops. So you could have hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes worth of data, stored through the file fabric and Memset, but not necessarily actually on the user's desktops. The users work with this like any other network drive they have on their machine, so they can drill into each of the folders. If we want to have a look at the quotations, we can navigate into the quotations. We see the DTE file. We can open up that file and start working on it. This file is pulled down on demand down to the user's desktop, so we're not pulling down hundreds of gigabytes of files down to the user's desktop. We can look at this file and make any changes to it that we want to. As it works like a network drive, it of course integrates into all of the user's existing applications. So whether you're using Photoshop, whether you're using AutoCAD, whether you're using Microsoft Word, and you want to open a file, those applications will be able to see the network drive there on the PC just because it functions as a network drive. So the drive is a very nice setup for people who are connected to the network and are able to use the file system in real time. Now, as we do have mobile staff as well, quite commonly inside of the organizations, we also need to use, to have other tools at their fingertips that give them other kind of methods of access based on their setup. That's also primarily why we have our synchronization tools, because some staff might be offline for a couple of days, maybe they're going on holiday, or maybe they're traveling on a long flight, for example. So our synchronization tools provide either a one-way or a two-way synchronization between the storage and the user's desktops. The users can nominate the folders that they have there, on which folders they want to synchronize. So I can show you that now. And it works in a very simple way. You can configure a synchronization pair. We can nominate which folder locally we want to synchronize between. So we can synchronize some folder on our desktops, maybe a marketing folder. We nominate the folder that we want to synchronize on the storage. So again, if we wanted to pull down all of the invoices, we could do that. And then we can configure how we want the synchronization to work, whether we want it to be one-way or two-way, and how often we want the synchronization to run. So whether we want to run it just on demand every time I press the button, or once every 15 minutes, or once an hour, or daily, or weekly. It's completely up to the end user to configure. That's very handy if people are just going offline for a long period of time. We also have applications, like I mentioned before, written for iOS and Android, which also give the same functionality available to users on their mobile devices. So over here we have just a simple Android emulator, but the experience would be the same on your device. They'd log in with the same set of credentials, and are then able to have a look through their file system and work with the files here. So we see the same file system we saw before. It's in the PDFs. We can open these up. If we had editors on the device like Word or PowerPoint or any other application that they have on their devices, they'll be able to open those files straight from their devices, work on them, and also save their changes back. If they have files on their devices as well, like in their photos folders and things like that, we also provide the integrations where they can upload those files back in to the file fabric and back to Memset as well. So those are, we've seen, quite a bit, through this demonstration, how far all of this functionality spreads, from simple as the sort of the web interface, through to, deep desktop integration at their fingertips, through to mobile access. We've seen quite a broad range of, points of access for the users. Combined, this means that, as an organization, we can deploy something like, the file fabric with Memset to get this up and running really quickly inside of our organization with as little friction as possible, just because it integrates into everything that they have already. That's really key for a lot of businesses because they want to just do this very quickly. So, we've shown also just a minute selection of the tools available as well through the file fabric and Memset for the end users. There's many more features and functionality that exists in the tools that are available to customers. But we're just touching on just a few of them here, since it's just a very small slice of the pie. And so, it's key to know that. and I think this is a very good system for people to deploy. It's very easy to deploy as well for them to get up and running with their new document management system.
So thank you, James. As a recap, I guess it's interesting if we talk about the benefits of the file fabric on Memset that will help our attendees today.
Yeah, so Storage Made Easy and Memset, we've been partners for quite a while. And, this combination is very powerful because the two platforms together provide quite a cohesive solution for end users. There's quite a few things we could touch on here. But some of the key things here are highlighted on the slide. So, for example, the deep content search, which we showed earlier in the demonstration, that's very powerful for organizations. We used a very contrived small example here, of a simple organization. But in large organizations and organizations that have been established for a long time, they often have lots and lots and lots of unstructured data. Word files, PowerPoint files, Excel, AutoCAD drawings, all kinds of different flavors of information they have in their storage systems. But it's very hard to find it, and that's a common challenge we hear from customers is you've got to be able to find that information fast, otherwise we lose business, we lose time, we waste time, and we burn money. So having a feature like deep content search, with strong storage on the back end is extremely key. That's one of the key benefits there of the file fabric. Also along what we call the automated deployment, Memset are handling the infrastructure piece here, and it's very easy to get the whole solution up and running very quickly. It's a very simple experience for the customers who want to get this up and running. There's a very friendly, it says there, very friendly user technology stack, that works with all their existing infrastructure we touched on. Everything with Memset as well is run, managed, and hosted within the UK as well. So that's very important for a number of customers. There's lots of reasons why you might want to do that. And it's also, as we'll touch on in a bit, very cost effective as well for the users. And as one of the key topics throughout this presentation is about getting a quick return on investment with any system, and that's very key, the way that it's been structured as well.
Makes sense. Thank you, James.
All right, so it's just a quick overview of the two service models that we have with SME and Memset. So we have effectively a choice between a shared server implementation, where you'll be sharing the infrastructure with a number of other customers. There's more of a software as a service, pure SaaS offering. Or we have a dedicated infrastructure, be that virtualized infrastructure or actually on your own tin dedicated servers as well. Benefits of the shared server, we can deploy it in a number of clicks for you as a customer. There's absolutely no server management for you guys, but for customers, it's pure software as a service. It's extremely cost effective. It's quick. It's fantastic, particularly smaller organizations or those that are dipping their toes into document management. You can get immediate ROI and immediate benefit for your business with very little effort. On the other side, we have the dedicated server, where you get the ability to do a lot more customization, request a lot more customization for the service. Now, both of these have full stack management and support right from Memset on the back end, so you don't need to worry about managing any servers or anything like that. But this gives you the ability to get much greater performance with very high IOP infrastructure underneath it. You can request or implement much greater personalization in terms of branding, so you can completely white label the service. You have your own personalized domains.
That's interesting.
And we think the dedicated server is particularly interesting for those who want to resell this product. You can then multi-tenant it for your own customers.
Okay, thank you. So I guess now I've seen a couple of questions coming during the session. Please, you are still on time to drop your questions if you have anything that you want to know. Guys, I've got two in here. One, Sarah is asking about if documents can be archived. So I guess that will be something, James, you could explain a bit more.
Yeah, so there's quite often it comes up when speaking to customers around whether they can sort of nominate another storage system to have documents archived off to.
Okay.
Yes, the file fabric can do that. Also, that's something that the Memset guys can also help out with there too. Getting an archive off to maybe off to Memset's second site, for example. That's something that the file fabric and Memset can handle quite well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, James. And there is another one. I get they are more referred to Memset. So Tom, maybe you can pick up this one. So they are asking for a specific security accreditation. So they are asking if Memset has got the 27001 accreditation.
Yes, 27001. Memset's fully ISO 27001 accredited. We have been for probably the best part of 8 years. Scopes our entire business. All of our accreditations on our website, memset.com. To go along with 27001, we've got PCI DSS, service provider and merchant, cyber essentials, PSN codes of compliance, particularly exciting if you work with government, and a raft of other accreditations on things like environmental control. So we're a very green business, and that's a key discipline of ours, and quality management.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. So I can't see any other question. I don't know, guys, if you want to mention anything before we drop down, or if there is anything you want to point out.
No, I think it's just a very good solution for a lot of customers. I'm sure if anyone has any questions after this, they can feel free to email them to the emails on the screen.
That's good.
We'll take it forward from here.
Yeah, from my perspective, I posed 3 problems. I posed those problems because I know the solution satisfies them. It's making us very happy as users.
Okay, thank you, James. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
So thank you all of you for attending this webinar. We hope you found this session very informative. As you can see on the screen, this is the contact details. Please feel free to call us, to drop any email. We will solve any question and any use cases specific that we need to deal. We are very happy to help on this. So thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.